Okay, so today we're going to do a deep dive into, um, some forces that are really reshaping our world.
Yeah.
We've got, all these reports and analyses on everything from Asia to the war in Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
and it can seem a little daunting. Geopolitics can sound very newsy,
Right.
but it's important for everyone to understand these shifts.
Oh, absolutely.
It's about, our daily lives,
Yeah.
the economy, the overall feeling of peace.
It really is. And what I find so interesting is how all these issues, they seem so far apart, scattered across the globe,
Right.
but they're all deeply interconnected. It's like one little thing can happen in one spot and suddenly there's this cascade of events somewhere else.
Like that butterfly effect.
Exactly.
Yes. The global butterfly effect.
So let's start with Asia.
Okay.
It's like this hub of ambition and tension right now.
Really is.
China, India, and Japan all kind of vying for that top spot on the world stage.
They each have their own challenges and opportunities, of course.
Right. China, for instance, is facing some economic issues right now,
Oh, yeah.
especially in real estate, and that could have a ripple effect on their Belt and Road Initiative.
Which is?
It's essentially China's big plan to build infrastructure and boost its influence across continents.
So like a new Silk Road.
Exactly, a modern-day Silk Road.
But if their economy is struggling,
Yeah, that vision could be in jeopardy.
and then you add in their assertive actions in the South China Sea
Right.
and the Taiwan Strait.
Yeah, these are major flashpoints because they could trigger a conflict not just in the region, but globally.
Yeah.
I mean, the South China Sea is a critical trade route,
Right.
and a lot of countries dispute China's claims over it. And then there's Taiwan, which China sees as a breakaway province.
Right.
Any move towards independence there could spark a huge international crisis.
It's a lot, especially with the war in Ukraine going on.
Oh, absolutely. The war in Ukraine has really shown us how fragile peace can be
Yeah.
and how connected everything is.
And China's response to the conflict.
Yeah.
Particularly with Taiwan, everyone's watching that closely.
Very closely, a lot of analysts are trying to anticipate their next move.
Right, because it could totally upset the balance of power.
Exact.
But then you have India, another rising power.
Right.
Their economy is booming, and they're taking on a bigger role globally.
Yeah, like in the G20.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also walking a very fine line diplomatically,
Right.
trying to stay good with both the U.S. and Russia.
Yeah.
Not easy in today's world.
No.
I mean, they're building ties with the U.S. through things like the Quad,
Mm-hmm.
which is a security dialogue between the U.S., India, Japan, and Australia.
Right.
But they still depend on Russia for military equipment and energy.
It's a real balancing act.
It is.
What do you think their long-term goals are? Global power or more regional?
India's rise is really fascinating.
Yeah.
They could be a force for stability in the region, but their choices will be crucial in the years to come.
And their space program is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
They're reaching for the stars.
Right.
Literally.
It's incredible. They recently landed a spacecraft on the moon.
Wow.
Only the fourth country to do so.
Yeah.
It shows their technological advancement, but it also raises some questions
Right.
about the militarization of space and what that means for global security.
Right. It's exciting, but there are definitely risks involved.
Definitely.
Okay. Last stop on our Asia tour is Japan.
Okay.
They seem to be back on the world stage in a big way,
They are.
increasing their defense budget, strengthening those alliances, especially with the U.S.
And that's mainly driven by China's growing military and North Korea's missile tests.
So they see themselves as kind of on the front lines.
Exactly. They feel like they're right in the path of those potential threats.
So it's not just China, it's North Korea too.
Right. North Korea's nuclear ambition and their missile technology are a direct threat to Japan.
So they're feeling the pressure from both sides.
Yes, you could say they're in a bit of a geopolitical sandwich.
And I know it's not just military. They're using economic strategies too, right, to counter China.
Absolutely. They're investing a lot in infrastructure and trade agreements in Southeast Asia, trying to offer an alternative to China's Belt and Road.
Sort of a counter initiative.
You could say that.
So zooming out, looking at the whole picture,
Yeah.
what does this power dynamic in Asia mean for the region and the world?
Well, the potential for both collaboration and conflict is there.
Right.
You have these three massive economies, and their decisions will impact everyone.
Yeah.
The key will be to find ways to work together while also managing the competition between them.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
It really shows you how the world is becoming more multipolar, with power shifting away from those traditional centers And then you have the war in Ukraine,
Yeah.
sadly going into its second year.
It's really thrown a wrench into things.
It has.
It's just a stark reminder of how quickly things can change.
Yeah.
And how interconnected we all are. I mean, the conflict has obviously devastated Ukraine.
Of course.
But it's also impacted the global economy, energy markets.
Right. Even the political landscape.
It's hard to even imagine what they're going through over there.
It really is.
Can you give us an update on what's happening on the ground?
Well, the situation is still very volatile.
Right.
Russia is continuing its offensive,
Uh-huh.
but Ukraine is putting up a strong resistance,
Sure.
and they have a lot of support from NATO allies.
Right.
One thing that's interesting is how the nature of warfare itself is changing.
Oh, how so?
Drone technology is playing a much bigger role.
So the conflict is almost like a testing ground for these new military technologies.
Exact.
And the tactics that are being used.
Yes. And the lessons they're learning there will probably shape future conflicts.
Makes you wonder what that means for the future of warfare.
It does.
And it's not just about the military technology.
Right.
The war has exposed how vulnerable global supply chains are.
Absolutely.
Especially when it comes to energy.
Yeah. The EU's decision to move away from Russian gas has really shaken things up.
How so? Well, they're trying to reduce their dependence on Russia.
Okay.
And find other sources of energy.
Makes sense.
But it's a challenge.
Yeah.
It creates opportunities for other energy producers, but it also raises concerns about energy security in the short term.
Right, because they have to find that energy from somewhere.
Exactly.
And then there's the food security issue.
Oh, that's a big one.
Ukraine is a major grain exporter,
Yes.
and the disruptions from the war are having a huge impact.
A devastating impact, especially in places like Africa and Asia.
Right, those regions that rely on Ukrainian grain.
They're already seeing rising food prices, and there's a real risk of famine.
It's a humanitarian crisis.
And it is, and it's only going to get worse if the war continues.
It's really troubling, and it just underscores how interconnected we all are.
Yeah,
What happens in one part of the world affects everyone,
absolutely.
and the war has put a lot of countries in a tough spot.
Yeah, especially those with ties to both Russia and the West.
Like they had to walk a tightrope diplomatically,
Exactly.
trying to keep everyone happy.
It's a tough balancing act.
It is.
Countries like China and India, for example, they've had to be very careful. They
Right.
want to maintain their economic relationships with Russia,
Okay.
but they also don't want to alienate the West.
It's a tough position to be in.
It is, and it highlights how complex things are becoming.
And how polarized.
Yes.
Speaking of emerging power blocks, so the rise of BRICS has been really interesting to watch.
It has.
Adding 6 new members,
Right.
including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iran.
It's a pretty big deal.
It is.
It really shows how the global landscape is shifting.
Yeah.
These countries want to assert their influence
Mm-hmm.
and challenge the existing world order.
And let's not forget about their push for a BRICS currency.
Oh, right.
That could really shake things up.
It would challenge the dominance of the U.S. dollar.
Imagine that a world without the dollar as the main reserve currency.
That would be a huge change.
It would.
It would impact everything, international trade investments,
Right.
the whole global financial system.
It seems like this move towards a multipolar world is really gaining momentum.
Power is becoming more evenly distributed.
It's like the whole system is being rearranged.
Yeah, like tectonic plates shifting beneath our feet.
Exactly. And with all this talk about shifting power and new blocks,
Mm-hmm.
there's another region that's still a major source of conflict and instability,
The Middle East.
right? A place where history and geopolitics are constantly clashing.
And where the past seems to keep repeating itself.
And sadly, we've seen another escalation in the conflict between Israel and Palestine,
Yes.
leading to that humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
It's heartbreaking.
It is, the images are just awful.
The situation is incredibly complex.
Yeah.
So much history there.
Right.
So much animosity and mistrust.
And Hamas plays a key role in all of this.
They do, and their actions have been condemned by the international community.
Rightly so.
Yes, but it's not just a simple two-sided conflict.
No, there are so many other players involved.
Exactly, each with their own interests and agendas.
So who are the other major players?
Well, you have regional powers like Iran, Turkey, and Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
They're all vying for influence.
And what about their roles?
Well, Iran, for example, supports Hamas.
Oh, okay.
They see the conflict as a way to challenge Israel.
Right.
Turkey has tried to position itself as a mediator,
Interesting.
but they also have their own goals.
Well, of course they do.
And then there's the United States.
Right. A strong ally of Israel.
Yes, and they're in a tough spot.
Yeah, trying to balance that support with their other interests in the region.
Especially their relationships with Arab nations.
It's a complex situation.
It is.
And this conflict has global consequences too.
Absolutely.
Oil prices, political discourse in Western countries, it affects everything.
It's a reminder that these conflicts are not isolated.
Right.
They're all connected.
Like threads in this massive tapestry of global affairs.
Exactly.
And as we've seen with Ukraine and the tensions in Asia, these regional conflicts could easily escalate.
Yeah.
And drag in other global powers.
It's a very real concern. It's a lot to take in, isn't it?
It is. It's complex.
It can feel overwhelming, all these interconnected issues.
Yeah.
But that's why these deep dives are so important.
Right. We need to understand what's going on.
Exactly. Not just to be informed, but to really see where we fit in.
To see our place in all of this.
Yeah, because the world is changing.
It's definitely not standing still.
No, it's not.
It can feel kind of powerless, though,
I understand that.
faced with all these massive global forces.
But I think understanding is the first step.
Yeah. Knowledge is power, as they say.
It is. And then you can start to engage meaningfully.
So, big picture.
Okay.
Where are we headed? Are we moving towards a more fragmented world? A multipolar world?
I think all signs point to yes. The idea of one superpower calling all the shots that's fading.
Yeah.
We're seeing these new power centers emerge.
Right.
Old rivalries are coming back, and the old rules, they just don't apply anymore.
It's kind of exciting in a way.
It is
But also a little scary.
definitely a bit unsettling.
Like we're on this world stage, and we don't even know the script yet.
Exactly, and we don't know how it's going to end.
No, we don't.
And that's why it's so important to stay informed.
To keep learning.
To think critically about these issues and really consider what role you want to play.
Yeah, what impact do we want to have?
Because we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
So to everyone listening out there,
Yeah.
here's something to think about. In this world of shifting alliances and rising powers, what will your role be?
Will you just watch from the sidelines, or will you be a part of shaping the world you want to see?
It's a big question.
It is. It's up to each of us to decide.
Well, on that note, I think we're going to wrap up this deep dive into a world on edge.
I think that's a good place to stop.
But the conversation doesn't end here.
No, of course not.
Keep exploring these topics.
Yeah.
Challenge your assumptions and stay curious.
Because the world needs curious minds.
It does. And even with all the uncertainty and the complexity,
Yeah.
there's always hope.
Absolutely. Humans are resilient, we're innovative, and we can cooperate. We've faced challenges throughout history.
And we've always found a way.
We have, and it's up to all of us to work towards a better future.
A future with peace and understanding.
That's the goal.
Beautifully said. Until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay connected.
And stay hopeful.